Yes, good evening. My name is Reverend Dr. Wallace Bradley. I'm the president of United in Peace, Inc. I'm also the host of the Bradley Report. This show is being presented by United in Peace, Inc. The director, excuse me, please, the director and the producer of this show is none other than the chairman of United in Peace, Inc., and that's Dr. Terry Marsh Bradley. Got a very interesting show. As you are aware, the city budget is due. At least it was due by November 30th. The next city council meeting, from what I understand, is going to be December the 10th. I'm in support of what I perceive to be the people's budget that the mayor's trying to get passed. But it's up to 26 voters within the city council. Hold on, right here. My fault. Let me get rid of this here. Okay. There we go. So much for that. This show is dealing with the fact, as everybody knows also, the Epstein file is going to be released, where the House voted 400 and some votes to 1 to release it. Then it went over to the United States Senate, and they voted unanimously for it to be released. And it's going to go to the president, who has said that he would sign the bill for it to become law. We'll see about that, and so will you see, to voice your opinion. As you know, I'm also a social justice advocate. So I may endorse a candidate or give my preference for whom I feel is a better candidate, but United in Peace, Inc. do not have that right. But that don't make me a dictator. That's the law. They can't vote. I personally can. So without further ado, Amani, let's go to work.
I'm Micah Josh in New York. Let's get right to breaking news. In Washington, the Senate unanimously approving a bill tonight to release the Epstein files, now sending it to President Trump's desk. The president saying earlier he plans to sign it. The Senate wasting no time approving the bill just hours after the House voted 427-1, ordering the Justice Department to release all its records on convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. No one objected in the Senate. Survivors of Epstein's abuse clapping and hugging as the vote passed the House earlier. ABC News investigative reporter Olivia Rubin is with me now with the latest. Olivia, this unanimous action by the Senate tonight means that there'll be no amendments to this bill, but we just saw House Leader Mike Johnson essentially say that he wanted some changes to this bill. So what are we looking at right now?
He wanted it, and clearly he's not going to get it based on what you just said about the Senate. And it does seem like to be a rebuke from the Senate to Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson there. As you said, he had said that this is what he wanted. And I think it's just important to point out how quick this happened. It's very rare that you see something move so quickly like this, right through the House, right through the Senate, especially in this day and age, to have such bipartisan support on something, just one member not voting along with it. That's remarkable here. So I think now really the big question goes to what does President Trump do by how quickly this is moving? It wouldn't be shocking if potentially this does make it to the president's desk tonight. And remember, he has indicated he will sign it. But the question is, how quickly does it get to him? Does he stick by that? And then from there, how quickly does the Justice Department act? Because remember, this is a bill that compels DOJ to release the documents that it has.
Right.
So then it's on them. Remember, we're following the ball here. House, Senate, Trump's desk, DOJ, which seems to be the final line there.
Right. Now, we just saw the Senate again pass this bill. Has President Trump come out and said anything since the Senate made that move?
Well, he posted a few minutes ago on social media, just to kind of walk you through it. He said essentially that he didn't care when the Senate passes it. By the time he posted that, it seemed like they already may have. So it was tight timing there. But saying really the same message that he has stuck to in recent days, which is that he, quote, doesn't really care what happens with the files. What he really doesn't want is for Republicans to, as he puts it, take their eye off the ball of some of their key agenda items there, right? And then he went on in this post to list out a number of things he views as his administration's successes, but it also sort of fits with this shift a bit in messaging that we've seen since from the White House since the elections just a few weeks ago, where voters really spoke on affordability, the economy. The president seems to be trying to stay focused on that messaging rather than talking about the Epstein files, which he has indicated time and time again he just does not want to talk about, Ike.
All right, Olivia Rubin, thank you for that update. All right, for more, I want to bring in Nima Ramini. He's a former federal prosecutor and now the president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Nima, thank you for joining me. What legal privileges does the Justice Department have in choosing what to redact?
Ike, that's the question here. And it's not just redaction. And Olivia talked about the political process, but really it's the legal one that matters here. Let's not forget, the Justice Department, Attorney General Pam Bondi, with a stroke of her pen, could have released the full Epstein files and waived the privileges that apply here. We're talking about the law enforcement privilege, the deliberative process privilege, and maybe the executive privilege. Now, if they choose to follow the law and disclose the entirety of the Epstein files, there's really only two categories of information that can't be produced. The first is grand jury materials. That has to remain sealed and secret unless a federal judge orders them produced. And the second would be identifying information for victims of sex abuse. That has to be redacted. But other than that, if the DOJ chooses to comply with this law, they have to produce everything. Now, of course, the Department of Justice can choose to assert these privileges, saying that they're still investigating individuals in the Southern District of New York, U.S. Attorney Clayton there, and therefore they're not going to comply, in which case we're setting up a dispute between Article 1, the legislature, Article 2, the executive branch, and an Article 3 judge. We'll have to sort through those privileges. So it'll be interesting to see what the DOJ does, like Olivia says, but let's not forget, this act really wasn't necessary. They could have released these files on their own and waived the applicable privileges.
Right. Now, I want to make sure I get your name right. Nima Ramani. I messed that up before. All right. Now, President Trump, he's also asking the Justice Department to investigate several high-profile Democrats alleging they had a connection to Epstein. So how could that action impact releasing information?
It could. So if there's an ongoing investigation, we've all heard that. That's where that law enforcement privilege applies, right? So whether it's the media, whether it's Congress, a civil plaintiff, they can't subpoena the Department of Justice to produce its investigative files. But even if an investigation is closed, the deliberative process privilege doesn't require the DOJ to produce these files. That's typically how it works. Now, obviously, we know that the DOJ in July issued a memo saying there's no legal basis to go after any third parties or prosecute them or investigate them as a result of the Epstein abuse. So if they were to investigate the Bill Clintons, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffmans of the world, these are individuals that the president has identified as potentially being associated with Epstein. Well, that would be a 180 for the DOJ as well. Let's not forget Bondi and high-level folks there said there is no Epstein list and there is no basis to go after other individuals. So if Clayton and assistant U.S. attorneys in the Southern District of New York do, that would be an about face for the DOJ.
Now, is there any legal rationale for the Justice Department to choose to not release these files?
I don't think so, especially when Trump ran on this issue, Bondi and Patel, before they were appointed to those positions said they would release the files. As of earlier this year in February, we thought we would have the complete Epstein files. So I don't understand why the administration is sitting on this. But I also want to raise one very important point. If we're talking about the law, even if the full Epstein files are released and we see the FBI interviews, all the emails, the videos, unless there's a victim who's ready, willing, and able to testify against someone who's alive, obviously can't prosecute a dead person, there's not going to be a criminal prosecution here because under the rules of evidence, what's been produced so far is hearsay. And under the confrontation clause of the Constitution, someone who's accused, a criminal defendant, has the right to cross-examine his accuser. So the emails, they can't be introduced as evidence. Virginia Giuffre's memoir, similarly, can't be introduced as evidence. Those FBI interview notes, the same applies. So unless there's a victim that comes forward, Ike, we're probably not going to see the prosecutions in criminal justice that many people are asking for.
Interesting points. Nima Rahmani, thank you very much for your analysis.
The tapes that everybody knew was there, then they say they came out missing. And then when the estate gave all those emails and other documents to the committee, and the committee let it out, that's what they can't hide. It went from I wasn't there. If you wasn't there, you didn't see me not being there. I never flew to the island. I never been on this plane. And if you say you never been on a plane, you can't say I was on the plane. But what is happening? Nobody want to be attached to, I don't know if it's a bad word. I know it's bad. Pedophile, pedophobia, for whatever it is. Messing with children and selling children, abusing children, having sex with children, and doing it globally. And they realized that Epstein had a vast reach across the world to very powerful people. And one of the things he said, or Epstein said in one of the emails, from what I read, from what the world read, and I'm paraphrasing it, was like he wasn't the best of the best or the worst of the worst. He said that Donald Trump was worse than the worst of the worst, and he was dangerous. And then, when Marjorie Greene, and from what I'm understanding, I'm not sure, it's from what I've read, her and 3 MAGA Republican women that were true Trumpers have been abused in their life. And when they saw the survivors of what Epstein and the woman, I think it's Mitchell, whatever her name is, the one that was Epstein's buddies, that went and Trump said stole a girl that was working at Mar-a-Lago, who ended up committing suicide. It's a mess. You seeing it, you judge it for yourself. But ironic, they didn't think that the Senate was going to come right behind the House and make it to the point that Trump, I said, if it come past the Senate, he's going to sign the bill, and they giving it to him. And they saying there's nothing there. There's no evidence. But what's going to come out of it, this is what I believe. The person that's over, that's the Attorney General. That guy that's with the FBI. And a lot of other individuals gonna end up feeling the full weight because that they thought was a secret is no longer a secret. It's gonna get real messy. But to say politics is politics, be it global politics, be it national politics. But there's nothing more wonderful than local politics if you talk to people that live within the city of Chicago. What I mean by that is this. We have a budget that needs to be passed. And it's dealing not with property tax, but dealing with taxing the super rich, the big corporations, in order to pay for services that the people in the city of Chicago want and desire. And I believe after watching and seeing the No King rallies around the country, and almost 250,000 was here in Chicago. And when you see the last election, where it was a blue wave, you have some MAGA people voting blue, independents voting blue, and of course, Democrats voting blue. Because everyone is hurting behind the decision that President Trump has made. They're tired of seeing what's happening with his staff that's not caring for anyone. They were very hurt when they realized that the money was there for the SNAP piece, and President Trump and his administration held it up when the money was there to make sure, regardless if the country shut down or not, the SNAP money would not be touched or stopped. So without further ado, Amani, let's get to the next piece.
Out of their budget stalemate.
The latest debate comes with a warning from the mayor's allies about where potential cuts could come from. WGN political reporter Taman Bradley's here with the latest. Taman.
Lourdes and Ray, after the decisive vote against his tax proposal in committee, Mayor Johnson called for a 2-week pause in the budget-making process. But today, alders were pressing ahead with a plan to come up with $100 million in new revenue to avoid a corporate head tax. Today at City Hall, alders plotted a course ahead after Mayor Johnson's revenue ordinance was rejected yesterday in committee.
Colleagues have come up with additional revenue ideas, and we're going to take this time between now and next week to sort those things out. Alderwoman
Pat Dow, chair of the Finance Committee and a Johnson ally, was one of 25 members to oppose the revenue proposal. Only 10 supported it. Dow says she's against reviving a corporate head tax. Mayor Johnson frames the vote this way.
These individuals are more interested in protecting the corporations, the largest corporations in our city, than protecting working people.
I think it's a false narrative to cast our budget in that way. If you're either for corporations or you're for working families, I think we have to figure out a way to meet in the middle.
Dow says alders will present alternatives to the mayor's revenue plan as soon as next week. Alderman Bill Conway is part of a group crunching numbers. He's studying recommendations made by an independent auditing firm.
E&Y did identify $1.4 billion of savings. Granted, you can't get all of it tomorrow, but I do think we can get a lot of it. Our plan is, certainly talk amongst ourselves and talk with members of budget management and say, look, how can we do more on the efficiency side before we start looking on the cost side.
But even if the council comes up with a way to replace the estimated $100 million a corporate head tax is expected to generate, it's not clear Mayor Johnson will abandon his proposal. Close Johnson ally Alderman Jason Irvin says the only thing left to cut is public safety.
If people are interested in cutting police officers to make the budget balance, that's on them. I do not support cutting police officers or public safety or the things that have helped create a safer environment for our citizens this year.
Not everyone agrees that public safety is all that's left to cut, but so far budget negotiators are tight-lipped about alternatives, only saying, stay tuned. Ray?
We will do that. Thank you, Tom.
I spoke at the budget meeting, and I let it be known that this budget means a lot for the people. And the mayor and the 50 aldermen going to have to adhere to the needs of the people, especially in the climate that we're in now after witnessing what happened in New York. And with the last election, it was the people that came out and voted and made a decision and let it be known. It's going to happen here in Chicago. It's going to happen in Illinois. And I sat there and listened to the various communities. And the one community that caught my attention were the people that deal with the pets, the animals. They had the shelters. And if they didn't get the funds that were in the budget that was being presented, they would have to shut them down. And the guy got up and spoke before me and said, hey, forget the people with the migrants, forget the dog shelters, forget the mental health, forget all that, because, he had his red hat on, so, hey, they love Donald Trump. And to combat this, or to combat, man, if that's such a word, it wasn't in me to even argue with that individual and saying, hey, man, who wants to be about MAGA? Nobody. Don't even like MAGA supporters, don't even like one another now. So I'm saying this. Mayor, stand fast in your faith. I'm of the opinion and belief that God has found favor in you and in Chicago. And it's going to be all right because the people, I'm talking about the aldermen, going to help you with bringing that budget so that it can help the people of Chicago. You can rest assured. And they're going to agree to some of them rich companies that ain't been paying their fair share of taxes. They're going to have to put a little more skin in the game. So with that being said, I want to say to God be the glory. That's Gator's story. Vote, don't choke, and most of all, pay attention to what's happening because it affects you, and